A Treatise of Satan's Temptations. By Richard Gilpin. A Discourse of the Malice, Power, Cruelty and Diligence of Satan. Second part of Chapter 18. Satan's second grand design against duties is to spoil them. 1. In the manner of undertaking, and how he effects this. And more. If we slacken our care never so little, they recoil and tend to their old bias. And how easy is it for him to take off our hand, when it is so much in his power to inject thoughts and motions into our hearts, or to present objects to our eyes, or sounds to our ears, which by a natural force raiseth up our apprehension to act, for in such cases non possumus non cogitare. We cannot restrain the act of thinking, and not without great heedfulness, can we restrain the pursuit of those thinkings and imaginations. 2. Satan can also do it insensibly. Our distractions or rovings of thoughts, creep and steal upon us silently, we no more know of it when they begin, than when we begin to sleep, or when we begin to wander in a journey, where oft we do not take ourselves, to be out of the way, till we come to some remarkable turning. 3. And when he prevails to divide our thoughts from our duty, he always makes great advantage, for thus he hinders at least the comfort and profit of ordinances. While we are busied to look to our hearts, much of the duty goeth by, and we are but as those that in public assemblies are employed to see to the order and silence of others, who can be scarce at leisure, to attend for their own advantage. Besides, much of the sweetness of ordinances are abated by the very trouble of our attendance. When we are put to it, as Abraham was, to be still driving away those fowls, that come down upon our sacrifice, the very toil will eat out, and eclipse much of the comfort. Thus also, he at least provides matter to object against the sincerity of the servants of God, and will assuredly find a time to set it home upon them to the purpose, that their hearts were wandering in their services. Thus he further gets advantage for a temptation to leave off their duty, and will not cease to improve such distractions, as we have heard, to an utter overthrow of their services. Nay, if he prevail to give us such distractions, as wholly takes away our minds, and serious attentions from the service, then is the service become nothing worth, though the outward circumstances of attendance be never so exact and saint-like. Who could appear in a more religious dress, than those in Ezekiel 33:31, who came and sat, and were pleased with divine services? As to all outward discovery, as God's people, yet was all spoiled with this, that their hearts were after their covetousness? Now this distraction Satan can work two ways. 1. First, by outward disturbances. He can present objects to the eyes on purpose to entice our thoughts after them. The closing of the eyes in prayer is used by some of the servants of God to prevent Satan's temptations this way. And we find, in the story of Mr. Rothwell, that the devil took notice of this in him, that he shut his eyes to avoid distraction in prayer. Which implies a concession in the devil, that by outward objects he useth to endeavor our distraction in services. The like he doth by noises and sounds. Neither can we discover how much of these disturbances, by coughings, hemmings, tramplings, which we hear in greater assemblies, are from Satan, by stirring up others to such noises. We are sure the damsel that had an unclean spirit, Acts 16, that grieved and troubled Paul, going about these duties with her clamors, was set on by that spirit within her, to distract and call off their thoughts from the services which they were about to undertake. Besides the common ways of giving trouble to the servants of God in outward disturbances, he sometimes, though rarely, doth it in an extraordinary manner. Thus he endeavored to hinder Mr. Rothwell from praying for a possessed person, by rage and blaspheming. The like hindrance we read, he gave Luther and others. And truly so strict an attendance in the exercise of our minds, spiritual senses and graces, is in matters of worship. And so weak are our hearts, in making a resistance or beating off these assaults, that a very small matter will discompose us. And a smaller discomposure will prejudice and blemish the duty. 2. Secondly, he distracts or disturbs us also by inward workings, and injections of motions, and representations of things to our minds. And as this is his most general and usual way, so doth he make use of greater variety of contrivance and art in it. As 1. First, by the troublesome impetuousness and violence of his injections, they come upon us as thick as hail. No sooner do we put by one motion but another is in upon us. He hath his quiver full of these arrows, and our hearts, under any service, swarm with them. We are incessantly infested by them and have no rest. At other times, when we are upon worldly business, we may observe a great ease and freedom in our thoughts. Neither doth he so much press upon us. But in these Satan is continually knocking at our door, and calling to us. so that it is a great hazard that some or other of these injections may stick upon our thoughts, and lead us out of the way. Or if they do not, yet it is a great molestation or toil to us. 2. Secondly, he can so order his dealings with us, that he provokes us sometimes to follow him out of the camp, and seeks to ensnare us by improving our own spiritual resolution and hatred against him. Even as courage, whetted on and enraged, makes a man venture some beyond the due bounds of prudence or safety. To this end, he sometimes casts into our thoughts hideous, blasphemous, and atheistical suggestions, which do not only amaze us, but oftentimes engage us to dispute against them, which at such time is all he seeks for. For whereas in such cases, we should send away such thoughts with a short answer, "Get thee behind me, Satan," we by taking up the buckler and sword against them, are drawn off, from minding our present duty. 3. Thirdly, he doth sometimes seek to allure and draw our thoughts to the object by representing what is pleasant and taking. 1. He will adventure to suggest good things impertinently and unseasonably, as when he puts us upon praying while we should be hearing. Or while we are praying, he puts into our hearts things that we have heard in preaching. These things, because good in themselves, we are not so apt to startle at, but give them a more quick welcome. 2. He also can allure our thoughts by the strangeness of the things suggested. Sometimes we shall have hints of things which we knew not before, or some fine and excellent notions, so that we can scarce forbear, turning aside after them to gaze at them. And yet when all is done, except we wholly neglect the duty for them, they will so vanish, that we can scarce remember them when the duty is over. 3. Sometimes he suits our desires and inclinations, with the remembrances of things that are at other times much in our love and affection. And with these we are apt to comply, the pleasure of them making us forget our present duty. Thoughts of estates, honors, relations, delights, recreations, or whatever else we are set upon at other times, will more easily prevail for audience now. 4. Fourthly, he hath a way to betray and circumvent us by heightening our own jealousies and fears against him. And here he outshoots us in our own bow, and by a kind of overdoing makes us undo our desired work. For where he observes us fearful and watchful against wandering, he doth alarm us the more, so that 1. Instead of looking to the present part of duty, we reflect upon what is past, and make inquiries whether we performed that aright, or whether we did not wander from the beginning. Thus our suspicions that we have miscarried bring us into a miscarriage, by this are we deceived, and put off from minding what we are doing at present. Or, 2. An eager desire to fix our thoughts on our present service, doth amaze and astonish us into a stupid inactivity, or into a saying or doing we know not what, as ordinarily it happens to persons, that out of a great fearfulness to offend in the presence of some great personages, become unable to do anything right, or to behave themselves tolerably well, or as an oversteady and earnest fixing the eye weakens the sight, and renders the object less truly discernible to us. Thanks.